infrastructure or just the colony or the campus. It is very necessary to understand that if there are communities and communities which may not even have been marked on the development plans, mind you. We have just begun the exercise of commenting on the Mumbai's development plan, and there are no names of the slum communities. There is Reserve Bank of India colony, there is, what is it, the IPCL colony and so on and so forth. But when it comes to slum community, it is only a slum community with no name. The Sanjay Nagar, the Indira Nagar, the Shivaji Nagar, the Abdullah Nagar and so on. And then what happens is that the inside of the slum, which is a living community unit, much more living than the cooperative society or the complexes that you and me may be living in. It is much more lively, it is much more secular, it is much more accommodative. It is a beauty to see the relationships if you are really not callous about the relationship between human being and human being, which is very fast changing. And hence when these are the people, and not just the people, and not just the beautiful people as I see it, but also the people who contribute the most. Where are the domestic workers from your families? They are in the slums. And then when these construction workers to domestic servants to hawkers to everyone who are contributing a lot do not have a house because we do not have a policy so as to give them a house or allow them to have a house, even to build their own house when they're building everyone else's, then those slum communities not to be recognized. Imagine. Also there are so many commercial units and still the whole landscape is taken as if it is only a chunk of land, legal or illegal. Now what all things are illegal? All the things which I talked about, voting that they participate in, and still they are not taken into cognizance. Thanks to some of the ward officers who realized this point this time and then agreed that now the land use plan of Mumbai will be changed soon to show, and we would tell you that each of these slums, whether in Mumbai or Calcutta or Hyderabad or Chennai or Bhubaneswar, those include hundreds by thousands of commercial units. And if I call it commercial, immediately the taxation would come in, but not the recognition. So it's very necessary to really take what is given into consideration. Now if you go to Adivasis, then so it is a generations old story, and they are the only ones who would give the names of their fathers and fathers' fathers and fathers' fathers, not you and me. So it is very, very awfully undemocratic and awfully unjust, unfair and even inhuman to say that, okay, we want to develop that area. We would sit in an air-conditioned room, take that map and canvas and then draw the picture just as the United States of America came into existence, and the whole story was told by one of the fathers of those times, which is written 500 years back, what happened. So, my friends, it is at least the Panchashil as the Nehruvian era accepted it. That needs to be our value framework when we approach the Adivasis or those communities who are disadvantaged in the atmospheres like this, or even the atmosphere that is within the state's own paraphernalia. That's my point. And hence when we deal with the natural resources, we find that these are the people who live and who use minimum of the natural resources and give maximum of contribution. I'm open to debate on this. You tell me if the Adivasis have cut maximum forests. You tell me if the slums are using maximum of infrastructure, water to roads and everything else for their existence. You tell me if the working class is the exploiter of the natural resources and ecosystems, and I would debate with you. So it is very essential to also understand that these are the sections of populations who not only live with the natural resources, but they also save natural resources by sheer factor of their lifestyle. So simplicity, one single thing that is missing in every activity of ours in this country, if only that, and everyone is on the continuum, mind you, everyone is on the continuum, more or less. It's relative simplicity. But that is the factor that saves natural resources. I want you to acknowledge this, because otherwise the Adivasis clear the forest and not the urban class which uses the wooden furniture, including the teak walls and the teak floors. Friends, it is very necessary, therefore, that if we really care for people and natural resources, we should care for communities. This is the factor, unit, parameter and force and the strength that must be at the center of the development planning process in India. If that happens, we believe, it's still hypothetical because it has not yet happened in a big way. But wherever, even the micro level experiments, call them experiments, but those have taken place and tried out, we realize that the communities make a difference. Whether it is an urban community, rural or Adivasi community. And then these communities, why do they make a difference? Because then the priorities, the preferences, the principles, goals, even the criteria and the processes which give them the choice of needs, the choice of technology, the choice of commercial activities, the choice and the space for their own participation, and then the space for their own contribution. And that can go to limitless extent. People do most of the things in this country in a non-commercial way. But if that is not valuated, not recorded, not codified, then it doesn't get reflected into GDPs and Sensexes and whatnot. So that doesn't exist. The use of the solar power in this country by the rural women to the urban women, the poor as they are, they do not have even the access to the grids. Does it exist or not? The Adivasis who did not have rights, although they have been there since generations, do they exist with their land and agriculture and the organic agriculture which now brings more value from the market than ever before? So please also note that all this is not necessarily recorded. But if you or me reach out to them as an activist or an industrialist, it is our first duty to recognize that they exist, and not only exist, they contribute, and hence recognize their right to decision making and development planning. If this comes in, the true democracy comes in. And then what flows is inclusive of protection of natural resources. And natural resources are sources of food, sources of energy. Natural resources are sources of medicine. Natural resources are sources of housing material and also industrial capital. Those are not to be seen otherwise around us all with we inside, a cliche, as if it is an ozone layer, and then we go and discuss the climate change somewhere closer to that outer environment, either in Cancun or Copenhagen. It's not that, as everyone knows. And hence, when these natural resources have been protected because someone has not sold those out, because someone has not clear felled the forest, and who else but Adivasis? Because if you open the map, you will find forest is not here where we are sitting today. Forest is there in the Jungle Mahal or in Sundarbans, where the Adivasis and those communities are referred to live. So also for protection of the natural resources, it is necessary to take these communities in. Otherwise, throw the Adivasis out, throw the rural communities out, saying that you are clear filling the forest, even if they are using the dead wood for the fuel, and then let the commercial interests, the mining interests, some of them may be here, come in. So what way to go and which way and through what process to go. It has to be not just democratic, it has to be not just realistic, it has to be just, and it has to be also humane. Otherwise, that humane element in development planning with so much of paraphernalia is lost. Take land, for example. Now the land is gold, no more soil. And the land which is available is eyed upon by so many kind of multi-stakeholders. Everyone is a stakeholder, it is believed that way. Although the land to the tiller and land reforms, and we are in West Bengal, that was once the great valued principle and plan and program, now the reform means something else. And yet when the people really eye upon the land, what happens to the land itself really is concerned. The land which is used for real estate development, for example, take into consideration the need and the needy populations that also look upon that land as the only source to stand upon, to have a small shelter for them. Where else would they go? They cannot hang themselves to the trees like the Madia Adivasi communities. And yet there is no land reserved for such people who cannot buy land, why cannot even buy a house. So it is necessary when we take the land as a resource, and that is generally not considered. The wildlife is environmental aspect. The rivers are environmental aspect. The sea and the coastal land is an environmental aspect, but not necessarily land. But see what is happening to land. How is the land getting distributed over real estate development, and in whose favor? We question the iniquity in it, because it is possible to accommodate crores of people in the so-called financial capitals and the industrial capitals, if only everyone really believes in bit equitability, not necessarily demolishing everything. We never resort to those kinds of actions, but at least consider that. And then the major transfer and change of resources is from agricultural land to non-agricultural. I know what class I am talking to today, and yet I appeal to your conscience as to whether you would like to see this country not only importing once a while 5 lakh tons of wheat when the Indian wheat is standing, and then it loses its value in the market and the farmers suffer and suffer for at least one season and many more. But whether we all would like to see that all our agricultural land is really transferred to the non-agricultural purpose. Now it may be said that, oh, if it is a special economic zone, it is only 1 to 2% today, and then it is only 3% for this and 3% for that. But mind you, the trend and the fast pace and the track and the policies and the programs are going to deprive not just those agriculturists who are the immediate impactees or oustees, but you and me also of not only the green food which may be bought from the supermarkets for the time being, but also the food per se. And if you feel that the design has to be that, come and make in India, come and or grow outside and then bring in India, then it is different. But if you care for this sovereign state, the nation state, if you care for the self-reliance which our dadas and nanas cared for, from the individual to the nation state, the self-reliance as the principle, then it has to be different. You have to save the agricultural land, and especially when the industries come up. In Singur, that part of Singur, they want the land which is not only next to Durgapur Express Highway, but they do not want the other side land which is bit marshy, bit low-lying, not so cultivable. Then there is a problem. When the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor, and every industrial corridor for that matter, brings in around a small little freight corridor or a bullet train, but then mark on the map, not on the land even, 150 kilometers on this side And 150 kilometers of that side, I'm not making a mistake, everyone knows or doesn't know, maybe many of you would be interested in finding out where that space is. But that 300 kilometers wide and 1,500 kilometers long, passing through 6 states, ruled by different political parties, and then that is the area where the industries will have the priority. Look at the individual districts and the present situation at that point. And you will find that whether it is the Ratlam, Neemach, Mandsaur, or whether it is the Raigad district in Maharashtra, or Aurangabad for that matter, the land which is marked, the first phase, 3,50,000 acres. 10,000 hectares, one industrial area, 20,000 hectares investment regions. It looks so beautifully mapped on the map. If you go there, 70% of population is agriculturist population. 70% of land today is under agriculture. And yet some conference takes place in Gandhinagar in 2010-11. Japanese come in, and today Japan is India's, the sovereign investors. And then Mukesh Ambani and Aziz Premji ji are going there, I don't know on whose behalf, probably on behalf of these farmers, that they would be bargaining. Just imagine, look at it from your own eyes, empathize, put yourselves in the situation of the agriculturist and see whether it is just, whether it is democratic, whether it is humane at all. Because on paper, the land use is taken as changed. All these areas are going to be coming up. Where would the people go? Which channel would they approach? Where the agreements are already made, signed, although not fully implemented. Especially the manuals of the Japan Bank for International Cooperation, that will not be implemented as far as social and environmental aspects and preconditions are concerned. So it's all one-sided. And that is a mistake, and a criminal mistake, I'm sorry to say, because as we see it from the eyes of those who are there, whose life is on, and yet they have no place, no space, no choice. It is therefore necessary to consider the whole idea of public purpose, in resorting to which this kinds of transfer takes place. I know you are different kind of stakeholder, but I'm sure you are, as a citizen of India and a citizen of sovereign India, you also know that the British legacy was to be different. The British legacy was of forcible land acquisition, and that's what those imperialist powers would always expected to do. But even they defined public purpose in a much more humane manner, realistic manner, considering the Indian agri-based economy and communities. They said it should be for the poor, the housing of this, the village development, etc., etc. And since 62, but especially since 84, we changed this definition, and the fast transfer of land from agriculture to industries started taking place. Now you would say, so you don't want any transfer at all? So where would the industries go? No, as I said before, that at least take prioritized action so that the agricultural land, not just the multiple crop agricultural land, otherwise the real owner cultivator agricultural class will be thrown out, and the owner non-cultivator class will be protected. The Dalits, the Adivasis, those who give you organic food and really work hard and grow that, will be lost. Because theirs will be single crop land, unirrigated land. Today's unirrigated land becomes tomorrow's irrigated land. So how can you define that? As long as the cultivable land needs to be saved, it has to be with the consent of the people that we must decide where to have industries and where not to. And because of this public purpose, that is not only the principle of eminent domain of the state, now it has become principle of eminent domain of that class, which makes investment, no doubt, and that values, but that is only one kind of investment, and that is money. The other kind of investment, which is of land, of water, of human power, all is made by the other sections who are neither recognized nor given a due share. And howsoever it may be claimed that no, we compensate them, we also take them to resettlement and rehabilitation, it does not come through that easily, that fairly, and ultimately thousands, if not lakhs, are left out. And I can give you umpteen number of examples, but Narmada itself, today 2.5 lakh people are still in the valley. All policies, laws, judgments of the Supreme Court, all are violated, corruption taken place, 2,500 about fake registries are only given to the farmers, officials involved, but the papers and the records show that land was taken over and compensated by the alternative land or the fair amount of compensation. Not at all. Anyone can check incognito. So it's very essential to consider 100 times when you take away land, and it is not the land of the estates or the royal estates or the princely states. It is the land of those who have no other source of livelihood. Unless you prepare them for the other source of livelihood at least, you and me have no right to take away that only source of livelihood. It's not only violation of Article 21, right to life in the Constitution, it is inhuman. And in name of giving them employment, many times this happens. Take any special economic zone project and take a proposal which is sanctioned by the Board of Approvals, and I bet we will sit together and question that and see how many of permanent employment opportunities are to be created, how many are to be temporary permanent opportunities, how many opportunities, labor work also are such that that will inclusive of the whole family including women, so on and so forth. And you will find that that dignity of labor, of nature with which they have been living gets lost, even if they are given a job, but at least a job. The railway ministry, when Mamtaji was the railway minister, promised that anyone whose land will be taken for railway will be given. Number of policies have that somewhere with if possible or as far as possible, and that as far as possible kills all opportunities. So it's not so easy. And which of the employer really wants the local employees to be employed? Tell me. Everyone likes the migrants to be employed so that they don't get united, they don't have unions, and they don't demand much. So all this are human tendencies, but also the economic priorities are different for different stakeholders, and that is where the conflict begins. And this conflict needs to be resolved, and we are all for it, but provided there is a dialogue with openness, even the basics are questioned, and not just the doling out or charitable approach is shown. I come to water. Water as a resource, and who doesn't know that? But then, harnessing of water. How to and where to start with? We want to save water, and we want to also save the riverine communities who have kept their rivers flowing unparalleledly, unpolluted or least polluted. And yet those are the communities who are punished because they stay on the bank of rivers. Now it is very, very risky in this country to stay on the bank of rivers, to stay on the bank of sea, to stay on the bank of or the borders of the city. Boundaries of the city. It's very, very risky, as the people living on the natural and human resources call. But when we are talking about the protecting water bodies and protecting the water reserves and considering people and resources as the priorities in our development exercises, how to begin and how not to begin. We have to begin from the drop where it first falls. If we don't tap the catchment and we go in for the big projects where the catchments get not just degraded but destroyed, tomorrow you will see no rivers but the dam standing. Tomorrow you will see no groundwater left if the bottling water plants which are coming up in every city, every tehsil, every area and drawing water up to lakhs of liters per day without ever, in spite of their claims by Pepsi and Coca-Cola and whosoever, Bisleri to Rail Neer, they are not compensating the same. They may take Amir Khan, they may take Justice Kirpal, whosoever as their advisors or promoters, but the reality is the reality, and please take it from me that people are not fighting without any reason. People fight in Rajatalab, in Kachimada because their natural resources, which are their sources of livelihoods, are affected, and we also should fight these kinds of water management and water supply techniques, because it is also affecting the resources, the only resources that we can drink. We cannot drink power of our own future generations. It is also coming to water necessary to understand that the ecosystems cannot be transferred. The industrialists would like to get water and the cities would like to get water, no doubt. But if we care, then the inter-river basin transfer must be stopped, as the international academicians to the practitioners and planners really recognize this in a big way. It's not only that the decommissioning of dams is taking place in United States of America, that declared moratorium on large dams since 1994 through the Bureau of Reclamation, their agency building large dams as it was till then, but it is also that internationally now taking water from one river basin to another river basin is considered as damaging. So interlinking of rivers is not just drawing lines on the maps. It brings in so much of uthal-puthal कि उसके जो असर आने वाले हैं और उससे जो दावे किए जा रहे हैं कि हम यहाँ का सप्लाई एक्स्ट्रा सरप्लस वाटर वहां ले जाएंगे और जैसे कि हम एक ट्रेन में पानी भर के ले जाने वाले हैं, वो बिल्कुल झूठ है, केवल गलत नहीं। और जहां ले जाने वाले हैं वहां की स्थिति अगर उतने पानी को एब्सॉर्ब करने जैसी नहीं है, इफ इट इज एरिड जोन्स, वहां के असर अलग है, और यहां का पानी ले जाने से यहां के परकोलेशन के असर अलग है। तो चाइना कुछ बांध बना रही है ब्रह्मपुत्रा पर, और इसीलिए ब्रह्मपुत्रा का पानी गंगा, गंगा में कावेरी तक जाएगा, ये सपना सही नहीं होगा। ये एक प्रकार का आर्ग्यूमेंट है, लेकिन दूसरे प्रकार का आर्ग्यूमेंट ये भी है कि एक एक लिंक में 6-6 डैम्स है, पहली लिंक केन बेतवा, और ये सबके असर ध्यान में न लेना, यही क्या हमारा प्लानिंग है? इट मे बी द प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया, इट मे बी द सुप्रीम कोर्ट चीफ जस्टिस, but they also must consider in the framework of constitution that and the laws drawn out of that framework of constitution कि ये सब impacts देखे बिना कुछ नहीं हो सकता। अगर वो नहीं देखेंगे तो environmental impact analysis वगैरह सब post facto होता रहेगा, पर उसका कोई मतलब नहीं रहता है। और यही होता है, कोई भी रियल एस्टेट डेवलपमेंट हो, कोई भी इंडस्ट्री हो, उसमें अगर कंसर्न है एनवायरमेंट के बारे में, मैं